Hello everyone, this is the Theoretical Doctor and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. This is a series on the chapter Gaseous Exchange of Chapter 1 of the STPM Semester 2 Biology series. Check out the full playlist on my channel. If you want access to flashcards on this topic and other videos, do click the link below. It is available on my Pinterest and slides on this topic are available on my website. In this video, we will be continuing on gaseous exchange, whereby we will dive into gaseous exchange in plants. In my previous videos in this series, I've covered on the parts of the human, so do check them out if you've missed on them and if you'd like to know more. Hence, the subtopics covered will be on the structure and functions of stomata, the factors affecting the opening and closing of the stomata, as well as the mechanism of opening and closing of the stomata. Structure of the stomata. So before we know the functions, we need to know the structure. So a stoma, this part here, is an opening on the epidermis of the leaves between two specialized, photosynthetic epidermal cells called the guard cells. Okay, this is one guard cell, this is the second one, two guard cells, which sometimes can be found on branches and stems of green plants. And these guard cells, they play an important role in opening and closing of the stoma and is affected by external or internal factors, which I'll talk about later. So the guard cells are bean-shaped. You can see here they're bean-shaped, and the inner cellulose wall is thicker. The inside part is thicker than the outer cellulose wall. Each guard cell has a large vacuole and cytoplasm containing chloroplast and a nucleus. The epidermal cells surrounding the guard cells, this part here, are called the subsidiary cells. Functions of stomata. So stomata, they're important in gaseous exchange of respiratory gases, whereby the absorption of carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and the regulation of water in plants. Okay, I'll explain more about that in the following parts of this video. So oxygen produced during photosynthesis diffuses out through the stomatal pores into the atmosphere, while the carbon dioxide diffuses in from the atmosphere into the leaves. When there is severe water deficit, the stomata closes automatically due to the release of abscisic acid by the plant. Again, I'll explain more about this later. During water stress condition, when there's lack of water, and this is important because it helps in preventing water loss from the plants until water deficit is lessened, basically until there's water again. The guard cells, this is the guard cell, this is the stoma. The guard cells will gain or lose water by osmosis, and this is the one that will trigger the changes in turgor pressure of the guard cells. So when there is high turgor pressure, it will open, and then if it's less, it will close. So this causes the stomatal pore to be opened or closed. And remember the structure, the inner part is thicker than the outer part. So here are several factors affecting it. First, let's talk about the factors affecting the stomatal opening. It is influenced by high light intensity, low mesophyll carbon dioxide levels, as well as high humidity. So what are the factors affecting the stomatal closing? It would be water stress, high temperature, increasing carbon dioxide levels in the leaf mesophyll, as well as low light intensity, typically during nighttime. So water balance. When there is shortage of water or when the plants are experiencing water stress, the stomata will close. Concentration of carbon dioxide. If there's low concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the stomata will open. High light intensity, but obviously not extremely high. It will cause the stomata to open. And circadian rhythm. So some plants have biological clock, just like our body. When it's time to sleep, you go to sleep. When it's time to wake up, then you wake up, unless you're a night owl or your circadian rhythm is just haywired. So some plants have a biological clock whereby the stomata will open during the day and close at night. Mechanism of opening and closing of the stomata. I will talk about the potassium ion accumulation hypothesis first. So the opening of the stomata is associated with the influx of potassium ions into the guard cells from the epidermal cells. During daytime, blue light increases the activity of the proton pumps found in the membrane of the guard cells. So these proton pumps uses ATPs produced during photosynthesis light reaction to transport hydrogen ions out of the guard cells. So when hydrogen ions are pumped out actively, because you use ATP, the potassium ions will move in. They will move in to the guard cells through channel proteins to maintain the electron potential in the guard cells. So what comes out? Something similar has to come in. So the accumulation of potassium ions in the sap of the guard cells causes its water potential to decrease, causing water to be drawn into the guard cells by osmosis from the surrounding epidermal cells. So now water enters into the guard cells. What happens? The guard cells become turgid, they become swollen, and they curve inwards more due to the difference in the thickness of cell wall, and the stomata will open. So they become swollen and they will open, because remember, the inner part is thicker than the outer part, so you need it to actually be turgid to really open it. That is during daytime or when there's blue light. So in the dark or night, the proton pumps are inactive because there's no blue light, there's no light. The active transport cannot occur because remember, it's actively being done. The hydrogen ions are actively pumped out. So what happens here, because there's no active transport, the potassium ions will then diffuse out of the guard cells. It'll try to restore everything back to normal. What happens is the water potential inside the guard cells will increase, and the water will then flow out of the guard cells by osmosis. So now something that was so swollen, the water flows out. Basically, it's being punctured. So the guard cells will lose its turgidity and the stomatal aperture closes. How I would like to remember it actually is that water follows potassium. So you see, when the pore opens, it's because the potassium ions flow in. So the water flows in, it becomes turgid, and then it opens. So for the pore to close, water follows potassium. Potassium needs to come out. Water follows it, and then it does not become turgid, it becomes flaccid, and then it closes. Next is when there is water stress, the abscisic acid hypothesis. So when there is water stress, the plant secretes abscisic acid, or ABA short. This occurs when the transpiration rate is high and the soil water is low. Basically, the person is spending so much money, but then the balance in the account balance in the bank is running low. What happens is the abscisic acid molecules is being secreted by the plant, and it will bind to the receptor proteins in the plasma membrane of the guard cells. This will cause an increase in the permeability of the calcium channels in the plasma membrane. The calcium channels will open, and calcium ions from the surrounding subsidiary cells will enter into the guard cells, and this will trigger the release of calcium ions from the internal store in the cell as well, such as in the vacuole and endoplasmic reticulum, into the cytosol. So now all these calcium ions will accumulate into the guard cells, and what happens is they will stop, they will inhibit the proton pump, and there will be an increase in hydrogen ions in the cytosol. So remember, the hydrogen ions are actively pumped out. In this case, when there's so much calcium ions, they're like, no, stop, like just stop going out. And all the hydrogen ions will be like, yeah, okay, I'm not going out. So they'll stay inside. So now they're all concentrated inside. What happens next? So the potassium channels will then open, and large amounts of potassium ions diffuse out of the guard cells into the subsidiary cells. Because the hydrogen ions are at home. They're not being pumped out actively. So what's the point of this potassium being inside? So they're like, yeah, well, okay, yeah, the owner's home, I'm gonna leave now. So the chloride ions will also diffuse out. They're like, oh, potassium's leaving, I'm leaving too. So chloride ions will also diffuse out from the guard cells into the subsidiary cells. What happens to the water potential? The water potential in the guard cells increases, and water diffuses out to the neighboring cells by osmosis. The turgor pressure in the guard cell decreases, and the cell becomes flaccid. So when it's flaccid, the stoma closes. So remember, in the potassium ion accumulation hypothesis, I mentioned that water follows potassium. Here, hydrogen ions move in. Well, basically, they just never moved out. Like the calcium all just went and stopped, like stop going out. So the potassium ions then, like, yeah, okay, the owner's home, they move out. So potassium ion move out, water follows potassium, so water flows out, and the turgor pressure in the guard cell decreases and the cell becomes flaccid, and that's why the stoma closes. If you've reached this point, thank you very much. Hit the like button if you found it helpful, as it does help in reaching out to others as well. Do support my channel by pressing the subscribe button so I will know, and it gives me motivation to continue producing content like this in the future. And finally, share this video to those who might find this helpful. I will see you in the next one.